And we're live with Niels Lindtner, who has translated the book of Jeff Roberts on entitled Jesus 888, The Myth Behind the Man, questioning the historicity of Jesus. Niels, welcome to this channel. Thank you for agreeing to appear to explain the book and your views on the historicity of Jesus.
Thank you very much, Claire. Thank you for having me.
Great. So how long did it take you to translate the book?
Oh, the book I started translating in 2012, actually, when my father, Christian Lindtner, whom some of your listeners might know, might not, uh, he suggested that I should make a Danish translation of Robert's book.
Mm-hmm.
But but then I worked for a couple of years or so. I finished the job, but then I still had to find a publisher. So it was published here in Denmark in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
I'm
it took a
afraid I'm
couple
not
of
familiar with your father's work. Perhaps you'll explain the background of your father a little bit.
yeah. Okay, so his name was Christian Lindtner. He was an Indologist. He was he has a web page called uh, jesusisbuddha.com. And so he was, to put it shortly, he was very much into this you could call comparative religious studies. So where you try to find a historical answer to as to why religions look as they do. And so he would compare Christianity with Buddhism, which was his as an Indologist, he had a lot of knowledge about Buddhism, and compare the two.
What
And
is
then
the
he
word that he used? Endologist? It's new to me. How do you spell it?
uh, Indologist, yes, it's spelled Indologist.
Oh,
And so it's a person who studies the antique culture, religion, everything of ancient Greece. No, sorry, not ancient Greece, but ancient India. Yeah,
right. Oh, Indology, the study of India. I see now.
yeah. And so, of course, this was you asked about my father there, and then it was he got aware of Jeff Roberts' book, and Jeff Roberts also uh, in this book he's also exploring a possible Indian connection to Christianity, whereupon he rests on my father's work.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know exactly how or why my father got aware of this book uh,
It,
by a Brit from Liverpool who was completely outside of all academic circles. Really, he was a photographer in Liverpool, very well liked in the local community, but in a way you could say like from an academic point of view, a nobody, like
yes.
like a layman or so. So
Is
how
your
how
father Christian? And is I guess Jeff Roberts is not Christian.
No, no, no. My father. Oh, you mean a Christian? Okay. So my father is no longer among us, but he was not a Christian in that sense, nor was Jeff Roberts in that sense. Like ordinary people are Christians, because you did ask me if he was a Christian, right?
Yes.
Uh, Yeah. Okay. So uh, the ordinary conception of what it is to be a Christian is like if we go to a Danish folk church, they will every Sunday they will read aloud the apostolic confession,
Mm-hmm.
so that we believe in Jesus Christ, who was born by Mary the Virgin, who got resurrected after 3 days, and who ascended into heaven, and so on.
The Nicene Creed.
In this sense, the sorry what? Yes, the Nicene Creed. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and so in this sense, my father certainly did not believe in those things, and unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to meet Jeff Roberts, who wrote the book, the author of the book, as he died just shortly after he released the book. But certainly I can deduct that he did not believe in those stories either. So in this way, I can deduct he was not a Christian either. In that sense, I
But he,
stress.
do you think that your father and Jeff Roberts believed in God?
Oh, so of course it is a bit dangerous for me to try to answer on his behalf, a person I've never met. After all, Jeff Roberts, but at the very end, if we're talking about the author of Jesus 88, Jeff Roberts, in the very end of the book, in his epilogue, he actually ends by writing that we, the readers, have to find the divine within ourselves. Okay, so he uses this word, the divine, and in that way, he was religious. Yes, and as goes with my father, he certainly had. Uh, he was certainly also in a very enlightened way. How shall we say? A theist.
I see. So he did believe in a creator, but do you think he was closer to Buddhism than any other religion? Since you
No.
mentioned Buddhism, or did he also study other religions?
Oh, he studied many religions. Yes, certainly. He was before he went into Buddhism. He studied at the University of Copenhagen in his early days, and before he went into Indology, he studied ancient Greece and he studied Rome or Latin, and he also had this classical philologist's background, and so he yeah he,
Philologist, could you explain the word?
so a, a classical philologist is one who would normally who studies ancient Greek culture, language,
Right.
philosophy, everything, and yeah, so he studied many religions. My father. I don't know about Jeff Roberts, but my father studied many religions all through his life. Yeah.
Do you think he was closer to being a monotheist or a pagan?
So it was not. So what you're asking about is my father's conception of God, right? And so I was just before we went online, we had a short, brief talk on Facebook, and I think I mentioned that I was actually just in the middle of printing another one of my translations, and this is a translation by Dr. Alexander Jacob called Nobilitas. In it, he makes a quote to Goethe, who says the following, and I'm going to answer your question about God, who says the following, that man, he makes his God in his own image. And so some people, they make one kind of God, other people, they make another kind of God. Now, my father, he was a very scientific man. What kind of God do you think he made?
A scientific, well, a rational God, yes?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And so, uh, yeah, so that's the answer to your question. Basically, it was a very the Platonic God. And what was the Platonic God like? He was a geometrical God.
I'm afraid
Uh,
I don't know. Well, I know the Greeks were polytheists, so I'm not sure what kind of
hmm.
God Plato believed in.
So you have to make a distinction between, yeah, exactly, like you do, between ordinary Greeks and then enlightened Greeks like Plato, and those two different categories. All Greeks, they would receive the traditional education of by reading Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey, and then, but of course, enlightened Greeks such as Plato or Aristotle, they would not believe these tales. Like enlightened people today do not believe the Christian tales, actually. So they would have a different conception of God, and that did not involve believing that Susie could transform himself into a swan, for example, and seduce nice women, and so on. So yeah.
So it seems to me that your father would most likely have believed in the Abrahamic God because there is a construction of him in ideological terms. I mean, we can do that by saying we are here because there was a creation, because we are part of creation. If we accept that narrative, and because there was a creation, there must have been a creator, and that creator was the Abrahamic God.
Uh, I don't. Well, he should be here to answer the question, really. But and so the Abrahamic God. No, no, no. He had a no, no. He did not. Well, I can say one thing he always used to say is that in the end, the the main god is actually Zeus. So he as a philologist, as a historian, he would make the he would deduce. That's a very long talk, of course, but this is sort of the conclusion I'm giving you, that he would reduce. Uh, he would say that all of these religions, including the Abrahamic religions, in the end they would stem from the Greek mythology, and so Yahweh, which is basically the main god, he is Abraham's god, Yahweh. He would basically be a sort of copy of Zeus. This is what my father would say, not talking about his own belief, by the way. Yeah.
But Zeus was not really fully in control of everything because, well, he had a wife who got annoyed with him for coming down from Mount Olympus to mate with all these lovely mortal women and siring half divine children. So, and he was, well, perhaps a little afraid of her.
But
So,
yeah,
so
yes.
I think, maybe if we want to worship a god, we want somebody, something, some deity that is fully in control of everything.
uh,
And I think that maybe the problem is that, if Christians, think of God as Jesus, then
hmm.
yeah, there's something, that there's a dissonance there. If you want to worship anything, it has to be somebody more powerful than us. We don't want to be worshipping somebody that we wouldn't want to be. We wouldn't want to be crucified. We wouldn't want to die on the cross. So why are we worshipping something, you know somebody whose life we do not envy or at all share?
Okay, now I think the question you're really trying to talk about is, well, which god should we worship?
The
Uh,
most powerful one, if we are being
yeah,
rational.
of course, I agree. I agree. Of course. Yeah. And then yeah. Yeah.
Mm. And unfortunately, for people who reject the idea of the Abrahamic God, there is no other more powerful deity than the Abrahamic God. I mean,
Um have you never heard of theosophy?
I have, but I'm a bit vague about what it is. I think it's something about crystal balls and telling the future or something, or not, I don't know.
I cannot reject it. I mean, of course, theosophy is many things, and it is a global phenomenon. So there might be some places where theosophy is what your prejudice tells you, but um, I suppose that the more fundamental idea about theosophy is that, like, if you look at the word theosophy, theos is Greek, of course, and it means God, and uh, Sophie means wisdom or knowledge of, so knowledge of God. And what they basically say, the theosophists, is that in all the religions, in all the big religions of the world, like in Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, so on, all of these religions are sort of, they have, there are good things in the religions, there are also bad things in the religions. And it's about picking up, cherry picking the good things. So they are all sort of reflections of God, these religions, but they're not complete. And so the Theosophists, as far as I've understood, they sort of go beyond and they find inspiration in all of the religions. So none of the religions uh, 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 has a patent upon God, if you can follow me, according to the Theosophists. I don't
Yes,
know if that makes sense.
I understand, but I suppose the danger of that is that people will say, why should we trust your selection of what is good in religion, and then it becomes controversial and contentious, and I
Hmm.
suppose that was always the appeal of these different religions saying our book is from God, and and there's
Yeah.
no argument, you can't argue with God, and this is it, so you know.
Yeah, I agree. You're making a good point. They are sort of, they're sort of also taking a position, and by doing that, they are also making like division lines between themselves and other people, and then we can continue arguing about what is right and wrong. I
Mm-hmm.
agree.
Mm-hmm.
Still, though, they are making a universal approach, and that is, I have sympathy with this.
Well, I suppose that the whole purpose of religion is to keep your group in existence and apart from others. So, so religion is always about, the rules that members of that group are to observe to remain a member who is in good standing with the rest of the group, and and who is high status, who is low status, what rules are that are followed, and how it compares to other groups with other moral systems, and I guess human society, and human, well, international relations has always been a competition between these groups trying to do better than the others, and it is
Okay.
religion that transcends nation and race.
Mm. Well, first off, I should say, well, I I don't know if I can really claim to be a scholar in that sense. Of course, I have opinions, but I've a translator of a book. I've not studied my whole life. I'm also a young man. I'm only 38. Uh, I agree with what you said that religion can be used to keep your group strong, and so when it comes to competing with other groups, you're strong. I would offer a little bit different definition, perhaps. I would say that at the end of the day, for men and women, in any given time in history, what our assignment as human beings is that we have to approximate God. So we have to make ourselves better always, and we make ourselves better in comparison with God because He's by definition all good. So we have to imitate, and I think that is I think that is, but of course, from that definition follows your definition. Because if we approximate God, then we become good, and then we will be good in when we are competing with other people. I think I would. That's how I would define the role of religion.
Yes,
And
it's not trying to be God, because it's impossible for us to be God, but I mean, we can follow his laws since he did, take the trouble of making them,
mm,
if we believe that sort of thing.
and we can make a short connection to our departure point for this talk, because we started out by you started out by introducing me as the translator of Jesus 888 and this book by Jeff Roberts. And one thing that he's very concerned with, Jeff Roberts, is to point out all the, let's call it, things in the New Testament that is in discord with the traditional reasoning, like all the miracles or the resurrection or the virgin birth, or when Jesus he flies into the sky, or whatever it may be. And I think that we can throw away these things makes us more close to God. That we do not believe in myth. I think that makes us stronger. That we don't do that.
Well, a lot of these things we're not really sure people really do believe all these things because,
Oh
it's
no,
all
then you're
political,
wrong.
isn't it? We just have to
Then
say we
no,
know the story, and then somebody who knows the story will feel a
no.
connection with us because, it's like seeing the same film and enjoying it, or going to some concert. Oh, I was, at this concert, or saw
No,
that movie or whatever, and we feel a connection to that person.
no, I think you're wrong because if we are, I'm from Denmark, and I attend church service not regularly, but not uh, many, perhaps once a month or so,
Mm-hmm.
and and every Sunday in church they would say this creed that we believe in Jesus Christ, who was resurrected from the dead, who was born by a virgin, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
We believe. That's what they're saying. We believe. So they believe. I take people seriously. They believe. That's what they're saying every Sunday, the Christian in the Danish folk church. And I
But
think
the
it's,
English do the same thing too. It's
of
question
course,
and
yeah, yeah.
answer, and people want to be part of it, and they say the words. I've said it myself because there was a time when I did go to church, and I wanted to show that I knew the order of service and
Mm.
the responses and all that, and and then it was only later that, what is it? What does it mean? I don't agree.
Okay, yeah. Then I know this attitude. People do that, um, and then but I think what I'm doing is that I'm taking people more seriously than they are themselves taking them than they take themselves. They don't take themselves as seriously as I take them, so to speak.
Yeah,
Uh,
they're just saying we're just going through the motions. We just want to be,
yeah,
one of the gang, and it's a
but, but
ritual.
but why would you say that you believe in Jesus Christ if you don't believe in Jesus Christ? Why would you say that you believe in the resurrection if you don't believe in the resurrection? I think that's odd.
Well, it's like people saying, Amen or the Lord's Prayer. It's so pervasive that
No.
even people who aren't Christian have somehow absorbed it.
I understand your point. Uh, in Denmark, there are 73% of the population who are members of the Danish folk church. So in so in one way you could put it that 73% of the population in Denmark believes in these things, and then people like you, they would come and say, well, many people, they don't actually believe it. They are there because of the tradition. They're there because of meeting other people. They're there because they like going to that sacred place or listening to the music. They're there for many other reasons.
Yes,
But
but there is even the Church of Denmark also has a confirmation ceremony. So
mm,
you get baptized as an infant, and then
mm,
when you are of age, you get yourself confirmed to show that you are a proper paid up member of the church. So once you are confirmed, you are officially a believer. Well,
mm.
otherwise you're just somebody who goes to church from time to time.
Yeah, but these 73% are most people get baptized in Denmark, and most people get what did you call it, confirmation or what?
Yes,
Uh,
you do have that ceremony
yeah,
too, don't you, in
we do.
Denmark?
Yes, yeah,
And
we
it
do.
happens about, what, 13 or 14, something like that?
It is, and it is right about this time of year where we're in April, May, that the young people, they are. I think I heard the bells this morning. Maybe it was that. It is around this time of year that the young people, they are getting this confirmation. Uh, so I think it is to sum it up. I think it is a little bit weird to say things that we don't believe. Like I would say, I believe in Thor flying around, in Nordic mythology, flying around on his wagon, uh, and so on, and with his hammer swinging it around and creating lightnings. If I said I believed that without believing it, I think that would be weird, and I think you would also think that I'm dishonest. if I told you that I believed that, and then later on you'd find out that I did not believe it. So I think really, to put my message clear, I think really that talking about Denmark, I think really that the 73% of the Danes, they should try to concentrate, make their thoughts clear. Do I really believe this or do I not believe this? Not least also to perhaps save some money because they're also paying taxes, of course, to the Danish folk church. I think many people, they have not made up their minds really. They're just doing it for the reasons that you do, but it is not nice to be like that.
But
That's
perhaps they do it because they want to be seen to be Danish. That is the real reason why they do it, even though they don't
Yes,
believe.
but then they haven't thought through what the concept of Danish means. Because if the concept of Danish means believing in myth, then it's embarrassing to be Danish in that sense. You see?
But all countries, ancient, especially ancient ones, have myths. You know, the Greeks have myths,
Hmm.
and maybe most people didn't believe in them because, you know, they would just say we just do it because we're Greek or Roman or Chinese or, you know, what, Mexican or whatever, and we
Yeah,
do it because we want to affirm this, you know, national or racial identity of ours.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so now we have a discussion here because you can you can put it like this, that you have two sort of way of looking at it. On the one hand, you're talking about the legitimacy of the myths, and yes, I would affirm that they serve a purpose, but that is in regard to nation building, so to speak. That we must accept that many people, they don't think scientifically, they don't think rationally, and therefore we need the myth. Because some people, they can handle the truth, as the saying goes. But between us, I prefer the truth.
And what is the truth?
Truth is always reasoning. 2 plus 2 is 4. That is the truth. It's always logic. That is the truth. And yeah, that is the short definition. Truth is logic.
But all these people that I've mentioned, and others, they need to know what it is they're supposed to be as, you know, Danish people, Greek people, Italian, you know, they need something to say, you know, this is the official moral system, and well, take it or leave it, basically. But you know, this is the official one, and I think the problem in the West is that nobody really knows what it is, because most Westerners have you know, do in fact disbelieve in, you know, in Christianity. So
Hmm.
that is a problem, because I think religion has a public and private purpose, and you know, religion is always, you know, we are the people who do this sort of thing, and we are people who don't do this sort of thing, and you know, it's that kind of rule that gives us our group identity, I think.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, you're saying that we need the myth, we need we need a frame, we need a religion, we need something we can all identify with. Is that it? Or
Yes, that will make us behave properly, and
yeah.
you know, make us feel that, you know, we're doing the right thing. But you know, obviously we don't want to you know, we don't want to be Aztecs, because you know, we'll all end up having our hearts ripped out.
Yeah, but I agree. But then I agree that we need such a thing. We need a state religion, and we need something that we can all make a reference to.
Yes, so you know, talking about the Chinese, I mean, you know, officially their religion is Marxism, you know, historical dialectic, historical materialism, and I was thinking about how easy it is to believe in what Marx said. You know, it's like, oh, you know, this is what happens. You have these different ideas; they are opposites of each other, and people basically support these ideas in opposition to the other group, and they fight it out, and you know, eventually one day we will get to a workers' paradise when, you know, the right side wins. I think, you know, that is basically Marxism. which is kind of logical in a way. You can't sort of say, oh, it ain't true, because people are fighting over their political ideas. We don't know who's going to win, but that's how it's happening. But for Europeans, I think because they are asked to believe in something so absurd, it they reject it, but then they don't have an alternative that to believe in, and but perhaps that is a problem. That is what is causing so many problems in the West.
If okay, so I have to be make sure that I understand you. So you're saying that today, as Europeans, we sort of lack something good to believe in. Is this what you're saying?
Yes, because I think liberalism replaced Christianity a long time ago, because it was in the 1880s that Friedrich Nietzsche said God is dead and we have killed him. And I think he meant, belief in the Trinity is dead, and liberalism has killed it. And now liberalism is changing into something horrible, or has changed into something horrible, called intersectionality. But because liberalism never had a book, our politicians basically just changed the laws, and change the meaning of words and confuse everybody, and now we don't even know who we are, what we're supposed to be doing.
Okay, I understand. Okay, I understand what you're saying. And then that was sort of the account. So, but what if someone then asked you if you have to point to something? So we can't. Liberalism has destroyed many things. God is dead. Uh, Many people don't believe in Christianity. What would you point to?
Well, I mean, it seems to me, having looked at the five religions, it's like, you can't adopt the Eastern religions because they don't have what is called the rule of law. They're basically idolatrous. And it just means that, you don't have to try very hard. It's an inclination that I think, most people are prone to, even the Jews, who are, supposed to be the people who are just sort of horrified about idolatry, and they get the death penalty if they're ever caught bowing before idols. So I think this is really the worship of this supreme idea that they have, that has, that they're supposed to be, carrying on the tradition of. But I think most of the, they have already forgotten about it, because a lot of them don't really care about idolatry. But Islam is the one that says, no, we're not supposed to worship idols, everybody else is wrong. But I mean, we have to think in terms of how it would affect us if we did believe. Because I mean, one of the things that Jews say is that, belief in God is letting the police, God come into our minds as the policeman of our
Hmm.
mind.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it has an effect on our conscience. And morality, I mean, okay, morality can be divided into public morality, which is enforced by law, and private morality is just a matter of conscience. Do you want to obey this law? Would you care if you broke this law and you got away with it? Are you the sort of person who would care, or not? And hopefully, if the moral education is done correctly, people would just feel bad for breaking the law, and then they want to confess, and and then which is a good standard of observance. And we don't want a situation where people know what the law is, but they break it because they hate the politicians. They hate they hate lockdown. They hate because they don't trust their politicians. They won't they'll just do the opposite of what their politicians tell them, because they believe that they're lying or incompetent or corrupt. So we have got to the stage in the West, I think, where the morals of our politicians are completely unregulated. They can just do anything they like to us. They can suddenly change the laws and then say the law doesn't apply to them but only to us, and then they're going to change the law again. So I think we are in this sort of a terrible state, and particularly when they're about to start World War III, another European war. And I think there is a problem with Christianity. There has been, because the last two world wars were always started by Christians, and before that there was the European wars of religion. There is something peculiar about Christianity
Hmm.
that makes Europeans fight each other.
So maybe if I understand you correct, I have to sum up all the time. So maybe if I understand you correct, you're kind of saying that we're in a bad situation right now. Much of it maybe has to do with liberalism. We can't trust our politicians. We lack something. Maybe it is religion, you ask, but there might also be something wrong with Christianity. How do you feel when of course, I know that you haven't read the book that I've translated called Jesus 888, but what does it make you feel like when you hear about people like Jeff Roberts who says, "Well, we can't trust the stories we were told about Jesus. It's all it's not true." Does that? I suppose that would make you more miserable when you think about the current situation, thinking, "Well, it's no good," and then your eyes rest upon Christianity, and then you hear these voices saying, "Well, we can't use Christianity either because it's full of myth." So you don't know where to look. Is this a accurate description? I mean, for moral support, is this an accurate description or?
Well, no, because I'm not invested in the narratives. It's sort of, for children and for people who don't like discussing philosophy, you have to give them a story and then they can say, yes, we believe it, or we are associated with the people who believe in it. But I think, for the different religions, I mean, there are five world religions basically, the three Abrahamic faiths and Buddhism and Hinduism. So we can sort of get an idea of, which group is the most successful. Yes? And,
Mhm.
and, and,
Yeah,
and
sure.
I think, if we think there's something wrong with our national identity, then maybe, we can change our moral system if because it's not unknown for people to change their religion, when they think, oh, it's really not working now. I mean, China
Mm.
changed their religion. No, I mean, it changed its religion last century.
Mhm.
And Europeans, well, they were fighting over whether to be Protestant or Catholic. And of course, before um, before Christianity was established, Europeans had a different religion. They were
Mm.
polytheistic, and
Mm.
obviously there was something wrong with polytheism, or Constantine the Great wouldn't have adopted it. And we
Mm.
know there was enormous political instability before Constantine tried to he called the Council of Nicaea and everything, because there was a year of the five emperors. So we can presume that in that time the Romans didn't believe in their own religion.
Um, I don't know about that. So, but what are you saying exactly? Are you saying that?
I'm saying that Constantine um, paved the way to Rome becoming Christian, because
Mm-hmm.
he saw that Romans no longer believed in, the emperor dies, the emperor becomes God, and they just didn't believe in it anymore, and he wanted to give them something spiritual that will make them, shut up about the laws or whatever. So he, and the biggest idea going round at the time was Christianity.
Mm. Okay, so but if I have to understand, so you're looking for you're also looking to Rome and trying to understand the Roman religion and the Christian history in order to try to what are you trying to achieve? Trying to get find the moral strengths somewhere in order to fix our own culture today, or how is it?
Well, we're trying to trace the problems of Christianity. I mean, we know
Okay.
that that there was something called the Reformation,
Mhm.
which embroiled the entire continent of Europe in a religious war, because
Mm.
they didn't agree with, because the European monarchs didn't agree with taking orders from Rome. They thought they would be their own pope. They would, interpret the Bible for themselves without being
Yeah, yeah,
told.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
so it was in a way natural, because you can imagine the barbarian kings of Europe at the time. They couldn't read, they couldn't write. They knew this new religion came from their former conquerors. That they used to be part of the Roman Empire. So I guess, because that was the biggest idea going around at the time, they thought, okay, we'll convert to Christianity, make our subjects convert to Christianity too, and we will have the advice of the, archbishop or cardinal, sent from Rome to help these Christian, newly Christian kings govern their kingdom,
Mm.
and that was how it all started.
Mm.
And it was okay
Okay,
for a bit, and then it's like, oh, the Pope's bossing us around. We don't like it.
that okay. That's Christian history. All right, that's interesting. But uh, I don't. Christian history also sheds light on the fact that people they can argue about anything, and maybe that's what we're talking about. That we want to find something that is good and that can help us in our current situation. Uh, Christianity is full of examples of people arguing about anything.
Yeah,
I
because it's
know
so
that,
vague.
uh, and when it's vague, as you say, then it's because they don't use reason. It's not the Christians. They don't like reason. They don't like reasoning, and that's the problem. Uh, that's the big problem, and that's why that rational people they don't like going to church because it's sort of an offense to them. I'm talking about today, and it's sort of an offense to them, and then they have to sort of they have to continue thinking when the pastor stops thinking, and that's so for rational people it's not you don't find many intelligent people in the church today, unfortunately. um, and of course Christian history is interesting, uh, but it is somewhat ridiculous also, but that's perhaps a talk something for another time. I would say uh, in relation to the question about religion and uh, and our current times and about Christianity, that for your listeners, if they read the book that I've translated by Jeff Roberts, he has a chapter called about Gematria. Maybe a new word to many people.
Yes, it is new to me. Please
It,
explain.
yes. So one has to know that in ancient Greece, they did not have, uh, like we do today, uh, our alphabet on the one hand, and then the numbers on the other hand. They did not have that. They only had the alphabet, which mean, but they were capable of doing math still. How did they do that? Well, they used the alphabet as numbers as well as alphabet. So that means that A or alpha equals 1 in Greek, okay? And B, beta equals 2 in Greek, and so on. This means that if you see a Greek word and you were Greek, then you could, on the one hand, read it as it were, but you could also count it as it were. So a Greek he could, and the New Testament, we're talking about Christianity, it's written in Greek. So if you read the word Jesus, you have 6 letters: iota, epsilon, sigma, omicron, ypsilon, sigma. And that amounts to the number which is on the cover of this book that I've translated, 888. So
Oh,
this
that's considered very lucky by the Chinese. Have you ever been told that?
I think I have, yes. And I know that there is also a numerological tradition in China. The point is, I want to make this point to the audience and to you, is um, I should say that Jeff Roberts' point is, and that is my point too, actually, that is that uh, there is a layer in Christianity which has been completely forgotten, but which has a rational being, and that is expressed through Gematria. And if we think, perhaps like you did, perhaps I got the impression before that you think that we're in a poor state today with liberalism and so on, and nobody believes in religion. I would say that is the answer, because there is sort of a rational uh, core of Christianity which is not being communicated today because people are too stupid.
What is this rational core of Christianity?
Yeah, that is like In a word, it is Gematria, but it is that you have to live the life of a geometrician or mathematician. What does a mathematician or geometrician do? Well, they are involved all the time by calculating, okay? And they add and subtract and they do all these kinds of things as mathematicians do. And when they do that, they're not involved in killing each other. They are occupied with calculating. So this sort of a way of life is a life that appeals to the reasonable side of human beings, and the part of human beings that should be cultivated. So we should not cultivate our desires. We should not cultivate our longings. We should cultivate our intellect and our reasoning.
We should cultivate wisdom. Don't you agree?
Yeah, and then we have to define what wisdom is. Of course, I do. And so, and our listeners might keep in mind Plato's definition of God. He had in front of his academy a sign, so the story goes, that he who does not know how to do geometry, shall not enter. So,
Okay, well, not
so,
everybody is good at maths.
basically that's what they're saying, and it makes sense because if you meet people who are always trying to come up with solutions and trying to figure out things, they're not struck by if something is going on and something is can go into a bad direction, some situation. Let's give an example. Let's talk about the Iraqi war. Everybody said, "Oh, he has weapons of mass destruction." The mathematician, he would say, "Let's prove it before we do anything." We have to find the reasons. We have to prove it, and so you have to train your intellect. And this is what Gematria is about. This is what the core of Christianity is about. But it's just neglected because people are too stupid today. But there's if I understood this conversation correctly, then we are a little bit frustrated about things how they are today, and I would point to this side of Christianity which no one knows as a sort of solution.
So, are you referring into any particular chapter or and verse of the New Testament?
It is well, as I said earlier, I'm a translator. I'm still a young man, so my father he died at the age of 71, but he studied all his life, and so he would be a better person to answer your question, for example, him. But as I understand, as far as my knowledge goes, then it is there are gematria everywhere in the New Testament. In all in
How
all
can I spell? How do I spell this word?
Gematrea, gematria.
Okay, right.
Uh, and so, but it's yeah.
So it's a concept rather than anything actually said in the New Testament. Is just to confirm.
A concept. It is a concept, of course. There's a notable example of it in the New Testament. You may recall in the Book of Revelations. It is something everyone. It is also in the popular culture today. Everyone knows that the number of the beast is what is the number of the beast?
666.
Exactly, and it says so in the Book of Revelations. Uh, And what is that a proof of? Of course, that the authors of the Revelations were doing Gematria because they're writing that the number of the beast is 666. And then everyone or many people throughout history has speculated who is this 666. But it is we can make guesses about that. But this little brief these brief verses in Revelation uh, testifies to the fact that the author was familiar with the tradition of Gematria. The,
Yes. According to the Yale University Library, it says Gematria is a Jewish form of numerology in which the letters of the Hebrew alphabet are substituted with corresponding numbers.
okay, so there's and we have to be good mathematicians if we have to make sense of this, and by mathematicians I mean logicians, because the point is that there's also a debate going on whether whom was the first to adopt or figure out this way of the gematria, because it's certainly true that the Jews are also doing it even today,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that my father, he would argue that the first to do it was the Greeks with Pythagoras, actually. And then the Jews sort of adopted that tradition from the Greeks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a question for the historians as well.
But how does it help to? Okay, so you get a value from words and sentences.
Mm, mm.
Then what?
Okay, so then what? That now you are being a very vulgar person. Then what? How can we use it? What good is it to me? That's a vulgar way of thinking, but it's okay to ask. And so the point, there are 2 points to be made here to your question. Then what is your question?
Mm-hmm.
2 points. The first point is the to many people bad point. I hope you can follow me, but then if you can't, you just have to ask me again and so on. So the first point would be that everyone have heard about the Greek mathematician Euclid.
Mm-hmm.
Euclid, he's famous for saying that there is no fast track or no kingly road to knowledge. That's one thing he's famous for saying. And so, what is it good for? Uh, it's good in itself. But I can give you another answer, because when we train mathematicians, we become better people, and that was my definition of what religion was all about. We have to approximate God, and Plato said that God was always doing math, so we also have to always be doing math. But I can give you another example that is more tangible, perhaps, of why gematria is important or what it meant. So there is another example. In Egypt, have you ever heard of the god? See if I can remember his name. Uh, what was that? Do you remember that Egyptian god with a tail and wings? What was his name?
I'm afraid I'm not familiar with the Egyptian pantheon, but I'll look it up.
Uh,
I can name them like Isis, Osiris, and
oh no, 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 no. Uh, okay, but okay. See if the name comes back to me. But I'll give the example anyway. There's Egyptian god whose gematria value is 365, like the days of the year. And what they would do is that they would look into nature, they would recognize some things like some special number values, like how many days there are in a year, right?
mm-hmm.
And then they would say, okay, well, if we take that number and find a name that has the corresponding number value, then if we use that name, we are sort of at the same time saying or referring to that uh, relationship in nature, like how many days there are in a year. Could you follow that?
No, you're saying knowing that the sometimes a number is significant, like the days in a year, and how
Yeah.
can that help us solve problems?
So if we found a name like the name of the god whose name I unfortunately forget right now, but if we find a name, let's say Peter, uh, who had the same number value as 365,
Mm-hmm.
then when we said Peter, we would also at the same time be saying 365, right? And by doing that, we would be sort of referring to this natural phenomenon that um, that there are 365 days in a year, and so the name Peter gets another meaning. Do you understand? It gets a new additional meaning, and so we can sort of store extra layers of meaning in the words by way of gematria. Does this make
Right.
sense?
So maybe if you're asking a question like, this year, who shall we choose to do something, and you and then the maybe more than one candidate comes to mind, and you don't know which one to choose, and then you add up the number in their name, and you think, oh, Peter must be the one because his name is 300. Is it something like that?
Uh, well, you see, well, if we did it like that, then the intention would be on our side. It wouldn't necessarily be that this candidate would have thought about this himself, if you can follow my meaning. Uh, but it is no, it is to it springs from the fact that there are some things that are special in nature, like what I just said, that it takes the Earth 365 days to move around the sun, and that was more significant then to ordinary people than it is to us now. The how the year was, and therefore they wanted to ingrain it in their culture, and one way to do that was through gematria. Um, I don't know
Okay, I
if,
thought calendars would be more effective.
of course, but I cannot answer that historically though. Calendars, I cannot answer that. But this, I can only, yeah, I can only focus here on the tradition of gematria. But I understand the way of gematria, and that a word can has more meanings like that. It makes sense.
It sounds like a form of necromancy, or
No, no, no. Necromancy is uh, something about raising the dead, isn't it?
well, perhaps I mean sorcery, or I don't know.
But I mean, uh, I can imagine it takes some fantasy perhaps, but I can imagine that to you and I who are living, I suppose, indoor. We don't know each other, by the way, for the listeners, but uh, you and I who are living in a modern age and we have everything. But to people back then, many years, 1,000 years ago, the stars and the year and natural nature, being in nature, was something quite different than it is to us today, and it was more. It was more. It had more meaning to them. It was more crucial to their way of life. How the season go. It doesn't matter to you and me if there's a storm tomorrow because we're safe, and so on. So it was. We have to really use our imagination in a way that people are not used to today in order to understand this, because it's a long forgotten way of thinking. But we have to understand why they did it. Why did they use gematria, and why even today are there a Jewish tradition that is still doing it? And I'm saying that it has something to do with the fact that there are something that is constant in nature, and we want to do everything we can as human beings to sort of understand that and to ingrain that in our culture. That is the short answer of it,
I
I think.
see. So it's numerology. I think that was I meant to say numerology rather than necromancy.
Yeah, I thought so, but I haven't any personal experience with numerology, so I couldn't be the one to compare the two. But uh, insofar that numerology also has an idea of God as a mathematician, then I would say yes. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I would say yes under that premise.
Right. Apparently, according to the Wikipedia entry, it says under numerology, it says the practice of gematria, assigning numerical values to words and names and imputing
Hmm.
those values with religious meaning
Hmm.
dates back to antiquity. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Maybe I should become a numerologist then. It sounds good.
Mm, mm. Oh, very interesting. Yes, I suppose, people might think it's a way of, predicting the future, and that there's, I'm sure the I Ching is also full of this sort of thing as well.
The
Um,
what, sorry?
the I Ching, it's a Chinese book
Oh, okay.
um, of telling the future, or asking yourself questions.
Haha.
You
Okay.
know, I think all ancient cultures have this sort of idea. You know, I guess it's a good way of saying, if you want something done, it's better than saying I say so. I believe this to be right. You have to say over signs,
Ah,
whatever. So this is the day we go to battle, or whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Finding something objective, so to speak, that is not. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Well, I mean, appealing to a higher power. It's a, because you're kind of saying, well, it's not just me saying it. Somebody more powerful and more knowledgeable than me is confirming, what I say. So you better listen. That kind of idea.
And you're right. Modern people can't do that. Not very many because they don't believe anything higher than themselves.
But it just means that, you know, we might all think we have the solution, but but then we compete with each other to say, my solution is better than your solution, and it just goes on, and then it turns to violence probably, and then the person says, well, God agrees with me, and this was how the prophets kind of made their mark. It seems to me.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if I can comment on that, but
Well, it's just a historical observation, because
mm,
that seems to me to be the role of the prophets of God. I mean, sometimes the prophets were armed, and sometimes they were not armed, but they they kind of made their point. I
mm.
guess, I mean, Jesus made his point. So it
Do you believe in a historical Jesus?
well, I assume he. Okay, it never bothered me, because it's like, yeah, so what if he existed? I still don't believe in God. You can take that position, and
Mm,
then and then it seems to me that a lot of people are, it's like, I hate the idea so much, I'm going to even deny that Jesus existed. I'm going to deny that Muhammad existed. You know, you know. It's this kind of militant atheism that I've noticed over the decades. It's not enough to deny the existence of God. You have to deny the existence of his prophets. So I remember a TV documentary by a historian called Tom Holland, and he was saying, "Oh, Muhammad never existed," but but he was talking to others who who basically hated the idea of Islam anyway. So it's sort of, yeah, it's obvious that you want to say this sort of thing, because you just want to deny the very basis of Islam by denying the existence of the Prophet Muhammad. And I guess the same impulse would be you know directed at Christianity.
mm. Couldn't it be also simply an impulse of sincere curiosity?
Yes, yes, but I mean, talking about Islam, I mean, the Quran actually
Mm.
says, it mentions Jesus as a chapter, devoted to Mary, and the position is that, well, Muslims accept that Jesus is one of God's prophets, and also the virgin birth.
Hmm.
So you can see, the Muslims saying, "Oh, Jews, come to us. Christians, come to us. Let's all be Muslims." That kind of idea. Because it's like, ooh, Islam is the most advanced model of monotheism. It's like, you don't want to be Jewish. You have all these restrictions, and then you're supposed to get executed for every little thing. And Christians, how can you worship a man about to die? It doesn't make sense. And
Hmm.
so, um, I mean that seems to be the answer to me. If we're going to be rational, as you kept saying, you know.
Well, you can't go into you can't really follow Islam because if we want to be rational, it doesn't seem very rational that Muhammad is supposed to have gained all his revelations by an archangel. That is very unlikely to have happened, and that is whereupon Islam rests. And so that doesn't make much sense.
But Jews have the same sort of, you know, I mean, they go one better. They say um, the Torah was handed to Moses on Mount Sinai, and you know all the Jews, you know, were looking up and they saw the whole thing happen, and you know that's our story. I mean, that's what they say anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I am not defending the Jews,
Well, but Christianity comes from Judaism. You know, it's
and I'm certainly not a defender of Christianity either. I am saying that all the Abrahamic religions they have a lot of bad stuff in them. Without being an expert on Judaism and Islam, not Christianity either. I've just translated this book, but uh, I think, and I can't even think about in Judaism right now. It seems a little bit vague to me right now. But of course, there's the Old Testament with all these stories. But no, I think we have to get across that point where we believe or propagate these myths. And Islam also has these terrible myths with Gabriel, who is supposed to have given the Quran to Muhammad in a cave, and that is very unreliable, and so on. So I think that is a first step. That is, we have to go beyond what is against reason.
yeah. I mean, I suppose it's still not as sort of stretching the reason as saying, oh well, Jesus is God, which is you know the problem of the Trinity.
To say that Jesus is God is a Christian postulate, and other people, adherents of other religions, they would say that their prophet or whoever is their God. So uh, it, that's I mean, I haven't heard a Christian who has been able to, um, in a good way, explain why Jesus is God.
No, because it's impossible to explain.
And other people, adherents of other religions, they would say that their prophet or whoever is their God.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think. Well, I suppose people don't bother too much about what Buddhists or Hindus say because, you know, I suppose it's the status of these groups that are, you know, that is in question. You know, it's like you know you believe in you know your silly stories. We're not going to even argue with you.
Um,
I mean, towards the you know, but Buddhism is atheist anyway. It says, you know, we just believe in
no, no, no,
reincarnation.
no. It's not. No, no, that's not true. There are so many gods in Buddhism all the time. The Buddha, he is always cheered on by millions and millions and millions of gods. So there are many gods in Buddhism. But but no, I think the line in all this should be that we have to be sort of what we are not today, because this world we're living in today is really a world. Uh, I mean, there are people who are rational, but what's taking up the big public story is irrationality. And I think that religions they because religion has to do with the betterment of man, and it has to be, if it has to have any meaning today, they have to be fighting for the spirit of man, and they can only do that if they elevate themselves above all the bullshit which is actually taking up space in public space, and they can do that by being rational. That's their only way of survival. So we have to learn to be rational and stand for rationality. But that's not very sexy. But that is the only way.
Well, I think people prefer emotion because, well, I guess you know that's what they know. I mean, you know, feeling emotion means we are more ourselves. Well, reason is just something that is difficult for most people because sometimes our reason takes us to a conclusion that we don't want.
Uh, so
or other
For
people
some,
don't want.
but for some people, reason is the way of their life, and we have to then learn from these people why they did as they did. That's the assignment for modern man. I'd say he has to learn to be rational. And you say, well, most people they are more in their emotions for whatever reasons. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it should be encouraged. I agree with you, but you would have to change the culture to encourage it, because sometimes you just say what is perfectly true, and then you get a strike or you get cancelled, and people contradict themselves the whole time, and they're not ashamed of it, because I guess they get away with it if they have more power. If they have a higher status, and to have a higher status, you have to pretend to believe in lots of stuff that are obviously
hmm,
absurd.
um,
Because the
well,
truth is, well, facts can be political, as we know from Copernicus and Galileo.
hmm, yeah, 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 yeah. Galileo he also paid for his science, but yeah, but that's really all I'm saying, Claire. That in regards to religion, now I've translated a book which is really going against all the myths,
Galileo,
and
he
it is
also.
not just negative; it's also coming up with something positive, which is an ancient way of thinking, which is called Gematria, and which is a way of thinking that is appealing to logic and rational thinking, and that's what I'm saying. That that's basically what I'm saying. Not more, not less. That 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 people they have there is a choice, and it is before everyone that they can live a life by the way they do today with YouTube and stupid television, and they can go to the store and live a life by eating and shopping, but they can also live a different life, which is, in my opinion, my humble opinion, uh, a rational life, a way of life that is something to do with what it is to be a human, and not just being an animal that is making more children and eating and entertaining oneself. But that requires, as I referred to Euclid before, that there is no easy way becoming that, and that is only through dedication, and that's what separate people.
But what you are expressing is a in a way a political objective. You want to live in a society where you feel there is truth and there is reason and there is justice. You want all three,
Yeah,
as
because
do most people, I imagine. That people can speak the truth as they see it, and as long as it makes sense, and and what is true and makes sense shouldn't transgress against the rules of morality.
so I'm saying as I do because I, like you, am a witness to the modern world. And I'm 38. I've witnessed 20 years of so many wars, especially here at the borders of Europe. So even though it is true, as you say just now, that most people they want a happy life and they want justice and so on in society, we must conclude that something is wrong. Something is not working.
Yes,
Something is not.
because of the religion of Christianity, is coming to the, it's obviously failing. It began to fail a long time ago, but I guess people thought, oh, but we'll make do with liberalism. Liberalism's all right. It accommodates Christianity, and we're doing really well, and we're flying high, and now we are, being run by crazy politicians who don't seem to care about starting World War III. I mean,
I
what do we have left now? I mean, who who do we appeal to when
well,
we're in this
we, we,
situation?
we as I don't know if you're familiar with the word or name Krishnamurti. He was actually a theosophist, as we talked about earlier, and he said there's only one revolution possible, and that is the inner revolution. So that is the one that you should appeal to yourself, and you have to say, well, okay, I may not be able to influence the mad politicians or the stupid businessmen or whoever, or the corrupt clergy, but I have to revolutionize myself, and you can always do that. There's always time for that.
That sounds Nietzschean. The will to power, and Superman, and man and Superman, and that kind of idea. Would you agree? Yeah, that's what
I
you
would
want.
also, I would agree, and I could also say that it sounds very Christian, which is paradoxical when you say Nietzsche, because the Christian idea is also that we all, if we are not, then we at least have a part of being God. We all have something divine within ourselves, and that is what we should cultivate. And that is actually the same as Nietzsche is saying.
Right. I suppose if we, you're saying the divine spark in all of us, in theory, is
Mm.
capable of reaching out to the higher power that runs everything. It,
We the higher power, as you put it, is a reflection of the inner being. So it is the same. What is inside you is the same that is outside you, and you have to learn that by looking inwards. It's the same thing. So yeah.
all right. Do you have anything more to say about the book? I'm sorry, I can't ask you proper questions because I haven't read it, but um,
No, that's fine. I really appreciate. We just met perhaps 2 hours ago, and I really appreciate that you took initiative to this talk. And I would just recommend all your listeners, if they are interested in well, this is of course a subjective opinion, but I really think that this book that I've translated by Jeff Roberts, called Jesus 888, is a really good introduction to getting a more realistic, I would say, uh, conception of Christianity, where it came from, what it is, and how we should look at it. It's a very popular way of going into the subject, I would say. So I would recommend all your listeners to, if they're interested in this, then read this book. And if we put our fingers and also on something about the current society and perhaps lack of values and lack of moral strength and so on, I also think that this book contains an answer to that, which I also touched upon, which was Gematria, which is really an alternative to to yeah, it's a place where you can find moral strength, basically. Uh,
through
but
through through
I,
the numerology that you recommend, is that
yeah, I know that this is a very the word numerology doesn't have a very strong currency in our culture, but I well, I will put my name on the block, so to speak, for that tradition of gematria, that it is sane and that it is a good tradition to follow. I know it has a very bad reputation today, numerology, and some people, they, for example, hate the Freemasons and so on, which are also a group that has uh, that are famously linked to numerology, etc.
oh, I didn't
So
know that.
yeah. You hear about that there are 33 degrees, for example, within the Freemasons, and you start reading, for example, Dan Brown and his books about uh,
The Da Vinci
Robert,
Code.
the Da Vinci Code, and there's also another one that takes place in Washington. I forget the name, where he has a lot of insights on this. So it has a very bad reputation. You used the word, for example, before, sorcery, but it is not like that. It's actually a complete distortion, because it is really, at the bottom of it, it is really a rational science. But the funny thing is that today it is sort of coupled with or sorcery or stupidity. Uh, and that may have also some justification, because the people today doing it, I don't know, might be lunatics, uh, but I'm just saying that in the traditional sense, it is a sound science.
Could you give an example of how it has worked?
But it works in the way that your mind is occupied with the truth. Like if you and I, we were drawing circles, and we were drawing squares and adding and subtracting all the time, then we were doing science. And in this sense, that we were educating or uh, using our intellect. In this sense, it is working. in this sense,
Oh, you mean it's
because
distracting us from war?
we would be using what we were supposed to be using, our intellect. This is the most human part of the human being. I mean, if you read Plato, he make uh, for those of your listeners who are philosophically educated, he describes the tripartite soul. He says that the soul has three parts, and one of the parts is the rational part, which is the divine part. And so it is the divine part that should be cultivated. And how do we cultivate the divine part? Well, Plato says that God always geometricizes. What is Gematria about? Geometry. So we have to do this. Like if we, you can make a parallel to this. If we never train our body will grow fat and bad. But it's the same with our mind. If we never train our mind in a good way, logically, and so on, it'll grow bad. If we only watch the news about people who don't know how to make right decisions, then we will be desperate and sad because nothing seems to be working. And so, yeah, it's yes,
You seem to be saying do mental arithmetic to take your mind
exactly.
off things.
That's
But
a good way of putting it. Thank you. Yeah, good way of putting it.
right.
Mental arithmetic. Yeah, acrobatics. Yeah.
Well, I guess most people are not very good at mental arithmetic, and for them it would be torture.
But
And I guess they would
yeah,
rather think of God and
no,
talk.
I know. And then they prefer the myth, and it's a lot easier. But that's why I would say that our clergy, I'm speaking about Denmark, has failed, and I also know it's true in other places, of course, but that they have failed because I think that it is their job, their assignment, to make the betterment of man is their assignment, their primary assignment. Instead of doing that, they are just filling people with myth, because what they're doing is they're being just political and opportune. In Denmark, I can tell you that the clergy, instead of preaching the gospels, what are they doing today? They are inviting Islam to come to Denmark. They're talking about the climate because it is what everybody talks about. And of course, they do it too. So they're just doing it because everyone is doing it instead of doing what they were supposed to do. And so I don't blame people so much because they're not doing this mental training, so to speak, because even when their shepherds are not doing it, who can blame them? But it's still the shepherds who have the guilt, and that is the pastors and the church people. So we're really in a bad situation, actually, I can tell you. But yeah, people don't. They always want the easy thing, the easy solution.
Well, I suppose the church is a creature of the state. When Henry VIII broke from Rome and said he would be his own pope, he was saying, well, the church should follow my orders, not the orders of the pope. And I guess, you substitute the absolute monarch for parliament, then it's, the church has to follow the orders of parliament, and parliament is, consists of these politicians that we don't trust and don't like, who change laws for bad and evil reasons. And I don't think
Um,
arithmetic would help us solve that problem. I think we just have to acknowledge that, the morals of our ruling classes are not regulated. They think they can get away with anything because they can change the rules.
I think that our ruling class is where they are because we don't have a critical uh, um, we don't have critical thinking. We don't have critical citizens. They've not learned to think critically, and the ruling classes doesn't want that. They want to keep people accurately stupid.
But you see, that is the problem of Christianity, I think, because Christianity for centuries has basically told the European, don't question the divinity
Yeah,
of Jesus, or
I agree.
else. And other traditions have a different kind of way, a different way to regulate the morals of its rulers. I don't know if you've heard of the mandate of heaven. Have you heard of it?
No, I don't think so. No,
So, so,
mandated.
so basically, it was an ancient Chinese idea, which is the presumption that every emperor of China begins his reign with a mandate of heaven that could be
mm,
withdrawn if he abuses his power and
mm,
misgoverns his nation. So, and the signs of that would be invasion, rebellion,
mm.
natural disaster, pestilence, famine, that kind of thing. And then they'll say, oh, well, the mandate of heaven has been withdrawn from you because you've been so bad. And then the next one will take over and will have the mandate of heaven until and unless it's withdrawn. So, it's a neat idea. It's very simple. It's easy to believe as well.
Well, I say great. Let's have the mandate of heaven again. I
Yeah,
think that's.
and I think it's basically the Chinese, even though they didn't know, it must be the Abrahamic God that they're talking about, that gives all these, mandates. Because I mean, that's the only way of controlling the morals of the emperor. It's like don't mess us around too much, or you'll be sorry, and bad things will happen to you.
Well, I think that's interesting. I think that we are very far away from how things are today here in the West when we talk about this.
Yeah, but that is your problem. Because the Christianity was always about, oh, we need some divine being to support the divine right of our kings to rule. So
Mm,
why the European monarch said, okay, Pope, we'll see how it goes about, you know, uh, you telling us what to do and sending your people, the archbishops, to help us govern, and it's always been a problem, because the monarch said, well, but why should I listen to him? He's just this man in Rome. He doesn't have the power to, make me do anything. He hasn't got an army, but he can get other people, other monarchs to invade me if he's angry with me enough, like the Pope did to Spain, to the Spanish Armada, to get Elizabeth. But basically, it broke down because all these European monarchs said, well, we don't think you're anyone special. You're just a man like us, and you have, you take sides. You're not always fair. You have your own interests to protect. We don't believe you.
mm.
And so I'm saying that there are other moral systems that you could be using, that doesn't give you all these problems. That is actually logical as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I haven't studied so much. I know that it's probably true what you're saying, and they broke with the church, the Roman Church, and so on. But yeah, the situation today is that no one believes in God, so we can't really have a mandate of heaven when no one takes it seriously.
But the
Uh,
thing is that we already know, don't we? I mean, a lot of people actually believe that the election was stolen in America, but they stop saying that because they don't want to get their, YouTube accounts, YouTube channels, you know,
mm,
attracting a strike or deleted or whatever. So they shut up. And I know people who actually supported Trump, and then they just did it. It's like, yeah, there was a bit of fraud, but it wasn't enough to change the result. Whatever it is, whatever idea it is they use to rationalize the cognitive dissonance. So we also know that there are people who will pretend to believe in things that they don't believe in because they don't want any trouble, right?
yeah, pretenders. Yeah, sure,
Yeah,
sure.
we all know people like that, and and so it seems obvious to me that if you control the fourth estate, the media, radio,
Mm,
TV, social media platforms, they can change beliefs, you know, they
mm,
because
sure.
really the fourth estate is a first estate, you know.
Mm,
I mean,
yeah, sure. Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and so it's not impossible. It's not impossible. I'm sure that there are lots, there are lots of people who are concerned, but they don't quite know what to do and how to say it safely.
No,
But
I
if they
agree.
acknowledge the problem, I'm just saying, come on, it's like, Europeans have stopped believing in Christianity centuries ago. They stopped believing in it centuries ago.
Yeah, I think you're basically right. Uh, and yeah,
Yeah,
so
because I mean, the American Revolution, it was all, we're not going to listen to the king. We don't want an official religion in America, so we're going to have a country that has no official religion. That was unheard of. And then, not much longer after that, there was the French Revolution. So the French could tell, the priesthood and their king exactly what they thought of them. And then there was the Russian Revolution. Same idea, same reasons even.
hmm.
So it's like it's not this little idea of mine that suddenly came into my head. It's a historical process that has been going on for centuries since the American Revolution, which I don't think Europeans have understood it.
Yeah, okay, I get it. And yeah, you're drawing a line that this way of parting with Christianity has been going on for many hundred years. Yeah, you're right. And of course, we have the French Voltaire, who was from around the Enlightenment time, where you also talking about the French Revolution, and he criticized it. And basically, this author that I've translated is just an in that tradition of Voltaire criticizing Christianity, and
What, Dr. Pangloss?
Dr. Pangloss, yes, and he wrote that. And but the point is that that is only one side. That is the negative, critical side against Christianity. But there is also the neglected side, which I have been alluding to, and that is Gematria, where you can maintain a concept of God and the divine, where you don't lose your morals, you don't fall into uh, bad things like liberalism or communism, but you remain the divine part without believing in the stupid things. So
Have you heard of the no height laws?
no height laws. No,
Yes.
no.
It's a Jewish thing, but basically they have this belief that they're supposed to teach the seven no height laws to Gentiles because they're the God's chosen people, supposed to set and uphold standards, that kind of idea. And they say Jews have 10 commandments, and it's harder for them, but for Gentiles they have the easier option of the seven no height laws.
So what are those laws, or just a few of them?
It's only seven. So to be a righteous Gentile nation, you should have laws forbidding murder, laws forbidding
Hmm.
theft, laws forbidding sexual immorality,
Hmm.
laws forbidding eating an animal while it's alive, and you would have the positive commandment of establishing a court and legal system, so the citizenry is not subject to arbitrary justice. So and then the last two would be prohibitions against idolatry and blasphemy, which is basically saying we all have to worship the same God. It's the God of Israel, who is also Allah, but not Jesus, kind of thing. I think that's
And
the idea.
why do you bring up those seven laws? Is that because you think they are good?
Yeah, I think they make sense. Because I
Okay.
think most people, even atheists, would say, well, the first five that I listed are fair enough, but they would have a problem with the laws forbidding idolatry and blasphemy. But that's the only two.
You're talking about ethics and morals. Well, I don't know about those seven laws. Interesting. I would, if people wants to know what I think about moral and ethics, I would point to read Plato. That's a good way of. That's a good moral he has. So read Plato. That's what I would say.
What did Plato say? I mean, just to give us a one sentence idea.
One sentence about Plato that I really like is that you've heard of the name Socrates, right?
What sophistry?
So, Socrates,
Oh, Socrates.
Socrates,
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah, Socrates, and he was famous for saying, "All that I know is that I don't know anything." Okay, you heard that too.
Mhm.
And so that encapsulates the spirit, which is humility. So if you know that you don't know anything, then you are not a fanatic, and that is the summit of the Platonic and the Socratic wisdom. That all he knows is that he doesn't know anything. That is the summit.
They still
And
executed him.
yeah, yeah, that was not nicely done, I think.
No, but the thing is, they gave him the option, like, you can leave, just don't annoy us with your annoying questions. And he refused because I guess he knew that if I left, everybody would forget about me. But if I stay and take my punishment, then people will still remember me. And maybe Jesus took a leaf out of his book.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They asked him, "What penalty do you want? What penalty is right for you, Socrates?" And he said, "Well, I want you to serve me dinner at the what is it called in English? Uh,
The academy?
no, like where the Parliament, like where you decide things." So he wanted a reward instead of a penalty, and that was conceived as mockery, of course, by the population, the
Mm.
Athens, and so he was making he was supposed no, they thought he was mocking them, but yeah, that was Socrates. But that was in a short sentence the moral lecture of Plato, and I think that is. We shouldn't look so much to Judaism or Seven Commandments. We should be reading Plato if we want to find moral guidance today. This is my message. Uh,
But the Jews are still around, but the ancient Greeks are no more. They
uh,
destroyed themselves in war, didn't they? In the Peloponnesian War.
the Greeks are still around through their works, and luckily we still have the books of Plato.
And you read the Republic,
Of course, yes.
and so he was basic. Did he ever define wisdom? Because he was talking about a philosopher king.
So normally the Platonic dialogues are famous for ending with confusion.
Right.
I think it is called apocritic. Uh, Maybe not the word. Something similar. But they end in confusion because the normally it goes like in the dialogues that there's someone who knows something or thinks that he knows something, and then Socrates comes around, and then he asks about this, and then the guy finds out that he really doesn't know what he's talking about. But then, but then that starts the process of him reflecting about what he thought he knew, and then he gets wiser, and then perhaps he gets to the standpoint of Socrates, which is, well, I thought I knew this, but now Socrates proved to me that I didn't know it. Maybe I don't know it. Do I even know what I know? And then he gets to the Socratic point of view. So that's sort of the of how it goes in the Platonic dialogues.
But
So
don't you think that the Socratic method is better for us than doing mental arithmetic? We should have more of these, Socratic dialogues with each other rather than avoiding the question by doing anything else. I mean, I think it's a shame that people won't talk to each other, even though they support the same side. It's almost as if there's a conspiracy of silence. That we're never going to talk about the really scary things.
um, I wasn't trying to put one thing above the other or at the expense of the other. I mean, both things, both dialectic and arithmetic, are important. There is actually Plato gives a curriculum for the philosopher king in the Republic. What should he study? And he would, of course, also he would say both things, both arithmetic or mathematics, and also dialogue or dialectics. And both things are human. uh, both things are very human way of thinking, and so both things should be taught, not at the expense of the other.
Mm, mm.
Uh,
I suppose one would be be for be useful for engineers, scientists, interested in technology, but most people don't have the mind that is equally good at both, and people find themselves just on one side or the other, which is a shame. But obviously both are important.
yeah, the molding of the mind. I mean, don't forget that nothing is constant. I mean, the way we think, you and I today, we are both product, I suppose, of the modern world. Only 70 years ago in Denmark, they would still be teaching about Socrates. We killed that tradition because we no longer teach ancient languages. Almost everyone knows English, but no one studies Greek and Latin anymore. So how the mind works is not really. I mean, everything is changing all the time,
Well,
and so
that is the problem because people are lazy. They don't want to learn new things. They can't see the point of learning the, Latin or Greek in the original because it's
mm,
hard. But then, if you don't change, I mean, if you can't read it in the original, you're just reading a translation, and a translation is somebody else's interpretation of the thing, and it might not be the correct interpretation.
great. I would use you. I would play what you just said to the Minister of Education here in Denmark so that she can learn from you.
But
I think
education
you
is so political. I mean, that is a terrible thing about it. I was just reading yesterday about William Tyndale, who got into trouble for translating the Bible into English because a few words he used were problematic for the priesthood, and he wouldn't change it, and then they burnt him at the stake. Well, it's a terrible history, and I
I
think
swear-
I think Europeans have been traumatized, and they don't even it's suppressed memory syndrome. I don't know, but I think this is kind of unique to Europeans because no other country was subject to that because in China it was like, yeah, peasant, you just about the mandate of heaven. You have to trust in us. We're not going to make you believe in, that Jesus is God, and you just obey the law, and we'll leave you alone, kind of thing. But for the European, it was just something else, far more insidious. You have to believe this, or you go to hell, and everybody else who doesn't believe it goes to hell, and you are superior, or whatever. And it worked for a while until it stopped working, I guess. So.
yeah, your good observations. I mean, you're right. Education is politicized today. I agree, and and it makes sense that it is because we made the point earlier that perhaps the ruling elite doesn't want people to be able to critical thinking, and so they keep people ignorant.
Yeah, but
And
they need to not be stupid themselves, right? They need to be not be stupid. So if they make everybody stupid, then there will be a new ruling class when the current one,
mm,
you know,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
grow old, get
It's
sick, and die, and then they'll be even more stupid and even more corrupt than the ones that are ruling us now. So it's something to worry about for future generations if you care about these
I would
things.
agree. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. It is in other words short-sighted. Uh,
Yeah, they
that
don't even
solution.
care about the national interest. It's like, don't you care? Don't do you want
Mm.
the Danes to become stupider? Do you want Britain to become stupider? And they say, yeah, we don't care because we'll be dead by then, right? Because that's what you think if you're an atheist. It's like, I'll be dead by then. It won't affect me, so I don't care.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how they think,
I
but
don't
it
know
is.
either. I'm only guessing, but
Yeah, but it's certainly true that it is short-sighted. To keep a population stupid is only for a short time. It'll go and then it'll break down. So,
then you become a
so
failed state, and other people will just come and invade you and take your stuff. I mean,
well, I agree. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's true. Um, but will you do anything about it? will you start doing math? I mean, people
Or
won't.
thinking through the problems, like, I think what's so difficult for the European is admitting that, nearly 2,000 years of Christianity could be wrong. It's like, could we have been fooled for all this time? And, what's the answer? It's like, well, okay, it's not nice, but, you can correct yourself.
I mean, if that is the question, whether or not one could have been fooled for 2,000 years, one can look to other civilizations who had other religions. For example, the Egypts, they had a whole uh, uh, they had gods as well for many thousand years, and no one believes in that any longer. So, of course, one day Christianity will also be gone, and it will be considered myth, just like we have Nordic myth, Greek myth, and so on. So the answer to that question, as you put it, the Europeans, they can answer, yes, they could have been fooled for 2,000 years, and it's better to be in that position than still be in a position of being fooled. Uh, I
I'm
mean,
so glad you said that. The possibility of correction exists.
I mean, it does, but it is. The trouble is that people, they look into the world. I do too, and you watch television and you think everything is never going to get any better. And but so yeah, so you have to learn to build your own world in a good way, and you have to not uh, take into account all the things that you cannot change anyway. You have to build a good little world in your own mind. So.
Or at least think in a rational way, as you were saying.
Well, if my definition of God is correct, that God is rational, then it's probably a good thing. Yes.
Yes, yes. All right then, Niels. Thank you so very much for coming on my channel at such short notice. I think it's been a very enjoyable and educational discussion.
Well, thank you very much for having me on this Sunday. I didn't prepare at all. We just met, but it was also, I think so too. It was very good. I hope that your listeners might learn something, if they're still listening.
Yes,
Not
yes, a
always.
few of them still are, and some may come
Okay.
back later. But I'll and if you have anything more you wish to discuss about your work, feel free to join me again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Claire. It was nice talking to you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye. Yeah, okay. Okay. Well, perhaps you stopped recording.